Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled People. In today's episode, military wife at a military exchange, looking to make me break the rules. I just need to vent. Entitled person gets their car hit, is found at fault. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Military wife at a military exchange, looking to make me break the rules. Alrighty. So, in my past, I was a cashier at a military exchange. Most of my customers called it the PX, Post Exchange, but it was the NEX, Navy Exchange. This was probably 4-5 years ago, so my memory on the specifics might be a little vague. This'll be a shortish quickie. So to lay down the story, being a military exchange off base, there were rules. You needed to show military ID, usually active duty, dependent/spousal, or retiree types, in order to enter and again to check out. You were allowed a guest, but they had to accompany you the entire time, and only one bearing the military ID was able to make any payment at all. With those in mind, let's dive in. I was just doing my job. It was probably an hour and a half to closing. I was usually at the register closing, just my preference, and I was good at it. Closing stuff always got done when I was responsible for it, assuming I had the time to do it, assuming customers weren't flooding the area in the last 2 hours. It had been a fairly slow night, so up to then I was in a decent enough mood. Things were pretty clean and I was just waiting for customers, straightening things out. Retail people know the drill. Then a lady, EL, came up to the register with a guest, her friend, F. The EL had stuff she was buying, showed her ID, which was fine, and checked out. That was when F set down a Visa gift card, one of the prepaid choose your balance ones. Great. I asked F for her ID after getting it into the system and gearing up to activate it. The EL showed her ID again, when it was multiple transactions and I'd already seen ID. I usually didn't care if it was the same person, while F tried handing me her money. I asked again for F's ID, and this is when the fun started. EL told me that it was okay, that F was with her, but I told her that I could not take the money from F without seeing a military ID. This wasn't my policy, this wasn't just the store policy, this was company policy. She insisted, so I radioed my manager on duty at the time. Thankfully this was one of the good ones, and she backed me up. I remember EL's next statement/demand very clearly. Do you really expect me to buy my own birthday present? Lady, what? I'm upholding my company's policy. I, supported by my manager, repeated that I could not accept money from anyone without seeing a military ID, but if she really wanted F to buy her that Visa card, she could have F buy it at the Walmart up the street, literally 2 minutes away, if she did not have the military ID. So EL started throwing things at me. I backed up as far as I could, against the wall in my register area, and then shoving stuff off of the seasonal shelf behind her, then off of one of the side stacks with Easter candy in it. She charged off out the front with my manager following, but not before my manager told me, "I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that." Not even 5 seconds later, my LP/security guy rounded the corner and followed. I don't know what happened after that, but it was nice that my management had my back. I never saw EL again. Her spouse is in a load of shit from his CO. I always assumed that. I'm a Navy brat, so I know how it is. But reminder that this was 4 or 5 years ago. Cool. Would have been nice if 2 shore patrol personnel escorted her out with rifles. This was an off-base NEX, so we unfortunately didn't always have MAs on site. But that would have been the best to have seen it happen. OP, simple question. If F, no ID, had simply handed the money to EL, has ID, at the checkout, and EL handed it to you, would that satisfy the policy? Or seeing the transfer, are you still obligated to deny PX price to visitor? Seriously asking, no judgment. policy was, if I see money changing hands to EL, it's still considered from F and I must deny it. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, I do distinctly remember EL taking the money off the counter from F to hand it directly to me, as if to present it as her own, so it did come up in that instance. Cash would slide, sometimes. Smart people just paid the dependent outside of AFES/NEX. This being an off-base NEX, my management held us to higher standards, so I never took money from a non-ID carrying person. Like the good old days when we would hand money over to the older folks to buy us beer, hee. Because of my experience as a mom and teacher of young children, was hoping that EL was forced to clean up her own mess. Children, even if the adult variety, should have to clean up after themselves. Hopefully charges were filed at least. OP, I hope you get a kick out of this. When I was 19, I was babysitting for a guy in one of my college classes. He and his wife lived on base and I knew nothing about the rules. He met me at the front to get a visitor's pass, I followed him to his house, and all was well. When I left, I noticed my gas was on E and I saw a gas station. I'm sure you can see where this is going. I put gas in the tank and I had to go inside to pay, it's 1995. They asked for my ID. I thought that was weird but showed them my driver's license. She said no, your military ID. I told her that I wasn't in the military and she asked how I was there. I was stammering, I was so nervous and I had a visual of me trying to get the gas out of my tank. A nice man behind me tossed his ID on the counter and said she's with me. Luckily, I had cash to give him and I hightailed it out of there. Lesson learned. Kane confirm. Used to work at a NEX. Once a year, security would show us videos of shoplifters. They were all ages and sexes and included one sweet old retired admiral's wife. It was crazy to see. I was joshed for accidentally thwarting one midshiplift just by making the usual store chit-chat. Stealing from an exchange is a federal offense, BTW. I was waiting for, you will address me as my husband's rank. I saw this once. Uncle took his wife, my mom, and myself to the officer's bar to get one of the best steak sandwiches in town. This chick was causing a ruckus in the lobby the bar was attached to, demanding these poor little E1s to salute her. Since her hubby was a E3. My 04 uncle stared her down and then got her husband called to him to make an office appointment at 6 a.m. the next day. My uncle for the last several years never got up before 8. I feel sorry for her husband if he's active duty. Poor guy. I just need to vent. This is the second time I've lived next to a minister, they are just the worst neighbors. They think they can just dump their trash in your trash can without asking. It shouldn't be a big deal, right? It is when it makes your trash smell like fish. Then, when you ask them about what they dumped in your trash, he lied about even dumping the trash in the bin. I have the smallest patch of grass between my garage and the neighbors. But these ministers have decided to use it to park an additional car. They have a one-car garage and they've filled their yard with so much clutter. They have no additional space. It's just really annoying that they didn't ask. Today, I was taking the garbage out, and they've now put their garbage cans on our small part of the yard. It's normally on the other side of their driveway. So annoying. I know this is so petty, and if this is my biggest problem, it's not a problem. But I needed to vent this out to the world. If their renters find out who their landlord is and contact them directly. Consider putting up a fence. It'll shut them down. A lot of ministers live in a house paid for or owned by their church. I work for a church in the US, and we don't own a parsonage, so we rent a home for our pastor. Call the church office. Whether the church owns the home or not, a portion of the minister's pay added on top of their base pay is going to pay for that house. Churches have a group who do repairs and keep the homes they own or rent clean and as undamaged as possible so that they don't get stuck with repair bills. They will be very interested to know that their pastor is being a nuisance / not maintaining the home. Or just tell them to stop by and have a look at the condition of the home. The pastor will typically have something in their employment contract about maintaining the appearance and condition of the home, as they are also expected to host there, which is why churches pay for homes that can host small gatherings for when prayer groups or folks needing grief counseling need to meet, as well as usually providing all the furnishings including appliances. Don't feel bad for being upset, it's a violation. They're intruding on your property and they know and don't care. It shows a complete lack of respect for you. I absolutely agree with the above. I don't think it is all ministers, but unfortunately the ones you have come across are lacking respect for their neighbors. Your happiness matters. Even though it isn't the end of the world, it affects your well-being. It is okay to vent and be frustrated. There are a lot of good ideas people posted to help rectify the situation. I hope you find a solution. Smiley face. In honesty, I'd call this into the church and take pictures so you have proof. What the other person said about the parsonage is true. I came from a church that did that, and I also watched as the pastor bought big screen TVs that he said were for the church for his house, had a free deck put in by people working at the church and didn't pay them extra. A lot of ministers and pastors take advantage of people's kindness and get away with it because they are ministers and no one wants to say anything. Some make a really good life at others' expense. I used to work with a Niuean girl who had family in a Samoan church. She told us once that she was spending a weekend fundraising for the church with her cousin. They were fundraising to build the pastor a new pool. Why the hell do we always have to walk on eggshells when we talk about our own properties being mistreated or damaged due to other people? It's not petty OP if your property is being misused without authorization. You have all the right in the world to be pissed. Never met a preacher who didn't lie. Lying is in their job description. If they couldn't lie, they'd have no job and nothing to talk about. The fastest way to lose my trust is tell me you're a Christian. They all lie, the whole institution is based on lies. Have you tried yet talking to them directly? If they don't listen, you could have the conversation again at the gathering after their Sunday service. Loudly. Well, he lied about putting trash in her can when she tried asking him. Imagine that, a man of the cloth lying. Entitled person gets their car hit, is found at fault. This happened a few years ago at an old job. I worked at a car rental yard, and next door was a car wash. It was open to the public, but it was owned by the car rental company for the purpose of cleaning the rental cars. Between the driveway of the two buildings is a space on the road barely big enough for one car. If a car parked there perfectly, if it was any further forward or back, it would start to block either driveway. This was a huge issue because if a car was parked there, it made it extremely difficult to exit one driveway and drive down the other, because the turn would be too tight. Considering we cleaned rental cars there, you can imagine how often we would come up one driveway and down the other. We reached out to the city council for assistance in this issue. They agreed that it needed to be clear at all times, so they painted the curb yellow, meaning it was illegal to park next to it. Did this stop people though? Of course not, or I wouldn't be here. It annoyed me when people parked there before it was painted yellow, but I knew that they weren't doing anything wrong, it was just an inconvenience for us. We just had to suck it up, drive down the street, do a U-turn, then come back. However, after it was painted yellow, people still parked there, and it pissed me off. Did they not notice or not care? It's bright yellow, so how could they not notice? If they don't care, then F***CK them. Road rules apply to everyone and the curb is painted yellow for a reason. Even if I was sitting at my desk, if I looked outside and saw someone parked there, my day would be ruined. I really hate entitled people. One day though, one prick was parked there and a colleague had to drive a 12-seater minibus from the rental yard to the car wash. The renter called ahead and asked to pick it up early, so we had to move ahead of schedule and get it cleaned ASAP. Not too sure what was going through my colleague's head. Perhaps he thought that he didn't have time to drive down the street and do a U-turn, but he decided to risk it and make the tight turn around the car. He chose poorly though, because he dragged the entire length of the bus across the front right panel of the parked car. I was talking to the owner in my office. We heard the scraping as it happened, and when we looked outside, the owner realized it was his car and sprinted out to see what the damage was. I stayed behind for a second though, I had to laugh. I caught up to him and saw what happened. He was pissed and he started mouthing off at everyone. I said to him, "You shouldn't have parked here though, the curb is yellow, that means it's illegal to park here." He said, "That's bullshit though, the rest of the street isn't yellow, why is this tiny patch yellow?" I explained to him why, and his response was, "He drove into my parked car though, it's his fault." You know who disagreed? The city council. The guy launched an insurance claim against us, but our insurance confirmed through the council that any damage done to a vehicle that is parked illegally is the responsibility of the owner. The damage on both vehicles was superficial, just traded paint mostly, but hopefully the guy learned his lesson. Great story. I have a discussion with my wife from time to time because I refuse to park where the line is almost completely faded just in case, whereas she thinks I should just park. I'm on your side, the line would be there for a reason. It could be faded because it's not needed anymore, or it could be faded due to neglect, but it's better to be safe than sorry. I know this is, A, a few years ago and, B, previous job, but a small bollard parked way along the parking spot would probably have been the extra encouragement needed to stop people parking there illegally or not. You should put up a sign on that part of the sidewalk, warning, everyone who parks their car here has been ruled at fault by city council when their vehicle was damaged. LOL. Years ago, I dated a guy who drove a tractor trailer. He was making a turn once and clipped the front of a car. The car's owner came out of a store flipping out, and when the police came, my BF asked them to please give her a ticket for parking in the bus lane illegally. Which they did. She was so mad. But he never would have clipped her car if she wasn't parked in an illegal spot. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.